Never in the history of gaming have I seen something like this happen. I've never seen console prices increase over the course of its lifespan rather than decrease. And I've certainly never seen a console's price increase not once, but twice, which is precisely what's happened with Xbox. And it is a situation that affects all of the big three, not just Xbox. Nintendo increased console prices, and recently PlayStation also increased console prices. And it all has in large part to do with unique economic conditions in this current day and age. When it comes to Nintendo, you may recall that back in April of 2025, Nintendo announced price increases for Nintendo Switch 2 accessories. And so we ultimately ended up with prices that look like this. So for example, Nintendo Switch 2 Pro controller went from $80 to $85. A pair of Joy-Con 2s went from $90 to $95, so on and so forth. But then there was another price increase that happened with the Nintendo Switch, in particular Switch 1, as well as Switch 2 accessories, as announced here on August 1st, 2025, when Nintendo Switch 1 prices went from, for example, the OLED version from $350 to $400, the non-OLED from $300 to $340, and the Switch Lite from $200 to $230. And Joy-Con 2 controllers increased price yet again, this time from $95 to $100. Not long thereafter, on August 20th, 2025, we saw PlayStation change prices for the PlayStation 5 in the United States. Scrolling down here in this blog post, you'll find PlayStation listing new prices for its PS5 family of consoles, and those prices have been applied. All of the different versions essentially increased by $50. The PS5 Slim went from $500 to $550, the PlayStation 5 Slim Digital Edition from $450 to $500, and the PS5 Pro from $700 to $750. And then there's Xbox, who back in May of 2025 already increased their price points for the Xbox Series line of consoles once. So right here we have Wario64 announcing that Microsoft raises the price of all Xbox Series consoles. And then beyond that, they announced that certain first-party games would be priced at $80, though we have seen them kind of waver on that front. Outer Worlds 2, for example, was supposed to be $80, but since all of the backlash happened, they've kind of retracted that, and Microsoft has made it so that game launches for $70. But yeah, the new prices for Xbox back then were already pretty ludicrous in terms of how much the price increased. So the Xbox Series S, for example, which, whose selling point is how affordable it is, went from $300 to $380 for the 512 gigabyte version. For the 1 terabyte version, it went from $350 to $430. The Xbox Series X went from $500 to $600. The 2 terabyte Galaxy Black version went from $600 to $730. That's a $130 price increase, so on and so forth. That's alongside myriad price increases for accessories. Fast forward to today, September 19th, 2025, and Xbox has announced yet another price increase for the United States. It reads right here, beginning October 3rd, we will update the recommended retailer pricing for Series S and Series X consoles in the United States due to changes in the macroeconomic environment. As for what the new prices are, here we have Shinobi602 reporting on this from Windows Central, highlighting the significant price increase for Series S, Series X. And yeah, at this point, Xbox is already losing as far as the console race or the console wars is concerned, but this is going to kill them. Paying $650 for a Series X, or if you want to get the 2 terabyte version of Series X, $800? Like that ain't no way people are going to go for that, especially during current economic conditions. But yeah, we're talking about, for example, the Series S going from $380 to $400. So since the initial price of the Series S, the console has appreciated in price by roughly $100. And then we have Series X here that had already increased its price point by $100 from $500 to $600. Now an additional $50, it's $650. We got the Series X Digital Edition. That was $450. That increased by $100 to $550. And now another $50. It is now $600. And then the 2 terabyte version of the Series X already increased by $130 and has gone up by another whopping $70 to $800. That means that the 2 terabyte version of the Series X from launch has gone up in price by a whopping $200. Insane, unprecedented. And yeah, I mean, the unique economic situation is that the US has been imposing tariffs on myriad countries, especially ones where a lot of electronic components are manufactured, components that are essential to the creation of consoles like the Nintendo Switch, like Xboxes and PlayStations, which is why we've seen these price increases happen specifically in the US. So for example, when Nintendo increased prices for the Nintendo Switch 2 accessories, that happened specifically in the US. When they increased prices for the Nintendo Switch 1, as well as increased prices for Switch 2 accessories again, that also happened in the United States. When PlayStation announced price increases for the PlayStation 5, this was specific to the United States. And then last but not least, when it comes to Xbox, for both of its price increases, this was exclusive to the United States. Even with their latest price increase right here, they specifically highlight how this price increase is exclusive to the United States due to economic conditions and the macroeconomic environment in the United States. And also, when you look at how much prices have increased in comparison to the percentage of tariffs that the US has been imposing on countries that help Xbox create its components that are required for the Xbox consoles, you can see right here that, for example, Derek Stricken came up with this chart that highlights the launch MSRP compared to the new prices after all of the price increases. And you can see that the percentage of price increase across all of these consoles has been roughly in the region of 30%, which is exactly the amount of tariff that the US has imposed on countries like China, which is where a lot of the manufacturing components happens. Daniel Ahmad in particular has been highlighting throughout the price increases of various consoles like Nintendo and PlayStation how currently there's a 20% tariff on Vietnam, 30% tariff on China, 15% tariff on Japan. And then on top of all that, in a separate post, he highlighted how Malaysia currently has a 19% tariff. And again, these are all countries where a lot of electronic components are manufactured. And again, these are like primary countries where a lot of electronic components are manufactured, and the price increases are aligning very closely to what the tariffs are right now. And worth highlighting is that back in August, tariff negotiations were still ongoing, as highlighted here by Daniel Ahmad. The situation was still fluid, which is why Xbox might have had to readjust the prices yet again due to new situations that have developed as far as, the economic situation is concerned, as far as tariffs is concerned. To that point, Daniel Ahmad said, "Here's what I said last month. With greater clarity comes reevaluations and adjustments. This is the second time Xbox has raised prices in the US this year. I wouldn't expect a third time unless Trump decides to raise tariffs again," which he could. And so then the question becomes, will something similar happen on the Nintendo and PlayStation front? Is it possible that prices will increase yet again for PlayStation and Nintendo? Now, as far as the Switch 2 specifically is concerned, that console has maintained its launch MSRP, but who's to say that won't go up over the next few months? I would not be shocked if that happened, frankly. The tariffs are no doubt impacting margins for Nintendo, but they likely maintained Switch 2 prices to ensure that launch momentum was there. But Nintendo's the kind of company that wants to make a profit with each console sold. And so I would not be shocked if ultimately Nintendo down the line in the not so distant future did decide to raise prices. And then with PlayStation, they've already raised prices, but is there a possibility that they'll raise those prices again like Xbox did? There's a non-zero chance. All of it is up in the air right now, but anything is possible with MSRP in the current economic condition. We will not be seeing console prices depreciating anytime soon with everything going on with the world economy right now. And of course, this also raises questions about what the price point for the Xbox ROG Ally will be, given that we haven't seen price point announcements officially, but former IGN editor Destin put out a YouTube video where he said that based on sources that he's spoken to, prices for the ROG Xbox Ally and the Xbox Ally X, basically the less powerful and the more powerful model, respectively be $550 and $900. How the Xbox Ally's price point will be affected remains to be seen, but something worth noting is what Daniel Ahmad highlights here, where he talks about certain exemptions when it comes to tariffs. Certain kinds of electronics are exempt from tariffs. So, for example, certain smartphone and computer parts are exempted from reciprocal tariffs. The thing about video games specifically is that the US government, for whatever reason, does not consider a video game console to be a computer, video game consoles are considered a separate category and subject to full tariffs, even though game consoles are the definition of computers. Sure, there are computers that have been tailor-made for a very specific purpose, but they are computers. But with the Xbox ROG Ally actually being a Windows computer that doesn't just do gaming, but where you can also perform other tasks as well, maybe the Xbox ROG Ally can be technically considered to be a computer by the government, which has this really misguided definition of what a computer actually is. And maybe as a result, the ROG Ally or the Xbox ROG Ally specifically will be exempt, whereas the Xbox consoles, because they can only be used for gaming and don't have other computing capabilities, maybe those are not exempt from the tariffs because that makes them not computers according to the government's definition. We'll see what happens when official prices for the Xbox ROG Ally get announced, but right now this is the current speculative price point. But yeah, as far as what kind of position this puts Xbox in, not a very good one. PlayStation and Nintendo are absolutely dominating the console market. Xbox has fallen woefully behind, and they're pushing more for essentially kind of being like a third-party entity at this point. They're trying to release their games in as many platforms as possible, including competitors like Nintendo and PlayStation. They're trying to make everything an Xbox, and all that does is devalue the actual Xbox Series consoles, because why would you want to get that console where you can get a PC that does the same and more? When you can play these games on all of these other devices, what's the point of just owning the actual Xbox console, since games are no longer exclusive to it? The third-partification of Xbox has already devalued the console, but now the price point going up by such a significant margin means that, I mean, yeah, there's really no good reason to buy an Xbox console at this point. The price now is simply far too high for what few unique features the Xbox Series consoles offer at this stage. And when exclusive games that you can only play on the Xbox Series are no longer a thing that Xbox is pushing for, why would you want to pay, $650 to $800 for an Xbox Series? It just, at these price points, the Xbox Series just makes no sense as a product. And then with the Xbox Series S, at least that was like an affordable option to quickly engage with Xbox titles, but it is no longer affordable, so the Xbox Series S has also become kind of moot. The Series S now is pretty much pointless. It just doesn't offer enough power, enough capabilities for it to be able to be priced at the current price points with the price increases. And so this spells a lot of trouble, I think, for the Xbox platform and ecosystem, especially where hardware is concerned. On the software front, they're going to launch their games on all of the platforms, and, that means that those games may very well do well and commercially be successful. But as a hardware manufacturer for video games, Xbox it feels like they're pretty cooked at this stage. At least Nintendo and PlayStation have the benefit of being kind of dominating companies in the gaming landscape. Nintendo still has those exclusives that are irresistible, and so there's still that draw for the Switch 2, even if the price does go up. With PlayStation, it's a similar thing where, they dedicate a lot to the PlayStation 5 platform. They do have exclusives that are coming up, and so there is some kind of value there, even if the prices go up, even though the prices going up will negatively impact sales, because games are just becoming less affordable during an economic time when people feel, kind of financially more strapped than they've been in a while. At least those are luxury items that still have some desirable elements, but with Xbox hardware being priced as high as they are and offering so little, these are luxury items that just aren't desirable in the current state of things. And so I am not particularly enthused by what the future holds for Xbox hardware with the current situation right now. These price increases, it was already bad enough with the last price increase, but this second price increase, it makes the situation that much worse. But I suppose only time will tell how all of this plays out and how these tariffs impact both PlayStation and Nintendo. And I don't know if that will somehow even the playing field a little bit if they have to increase their prices as well. But currently right now, Xbox is looking pretty worse for wear. And if you were planning to get an Xbox at some point soon, now's the time to do it. If you want to get it at the first increased MSRP rather than the second, you have until October 3rd to get an Xbox console at the current increased MSRP, to get them at these price points on the left here instead of the ones on the right here. But yeah, I mean, at this point, if you bought an Xbox, in the early days, you can sell them at a profit, even if they're used. That's how much the prices have gone up for these. It's pretty crazy to think about. And again, just a wholly unique situation for this generation of consoles. I've never seen console prices increase. Certainly not more than once, and certainly not to this degree. It's wild times in the games industry, and it's really unfortunate times to see how much less accessible, how much less financially accessible in particular gaming is becoming. But yeah, this is the latest on the state of not just Xbox, but the state of gaming console prices as a whole. And I'd love to hear what your thoughts and opinions are on this whole situation in the comments below. And to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.